everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for Let's Argue. EDM, despite its rampant popularity, will never be mainstream. Water, despite its rampant moisture, will never be wet. No, I don't get it. EDM, at many points within the span of popular music, has been very mainstream. Electronic dance music is very mainstream. It's very mainstream. Are there elements and strains and subgenres within it that will never be quite as mainstream? Sure. But like, as the word I'm looking for here is an institution, electronic dance music is quite essential to the mainstream music landscape. Why don't you review musicals if you feel you would be unqualified for whatever reason? It's not that I feel unqualified. Generally speaking, I just don't enjoy musicals. I don't. There are some songs and pieces from musicals that I do enjoy on an individual level, but like sitting through a whole musical, it's just not my vibe. Then I'd have to take into account like an entirely different, I don't know, system of analysis for a musical as opposed to an album, which is supposed to be just like, you know, a compartmentalized experience. And when you're talking about a musical, there's like a whole other component of theater and maybe even dance that is intertwined with it, that is meant to pair with the music. But truly and honestly, what's really holding me back is that a lot of the time I just don't really enjoy musicals all that much. Kiss from a Rose should be in the top 10 of any best songs of all time list, if not at the #1 spot. I don't know if it should be at the #1 spot, but like seriously, did you know that song, the lyrics are "Kiss from a Rose on the Gray"? Not the grave. It's not grave. Seriously, look up the lyrics. Like the lyrics actually are not what they sound like in the song. What does it mean to get a kiss from a rose on the gray? But I mean, the pianos are sick. Seal's voice is awesome, and there's like some amazing changes in that track. Fantastic chorus as well. I mean, great song. But I don't know if I'd say the #1 song of all time. If you could be gifted at any instrument, which would you choose? Piano. Hands down, piano. Piano is the alpha and the omega. You can do everything with it. Obviously, bass is my main thing, and I love other instruments too. It would be fun to be able to play trumpet. Fun to be able to play, I play some violin. I want to get better at it.
'Cause sometimes I look in her eyes, and that's where I find a glimpse of us, and I try to fall for.
But like, if I could just wake up tomorrow and just like be the master of any instrument, piano. Because like, once you do that, again, you sort of like have command of everything, and you're probably like way better at arranging than you would be if you were a, sort of master of any other instrument. So yeah, piano. Disco died in the late 70s and early 80s because white people figured out we weren't as good at making it. ABBA. Obviously, I'm not trying to like whitewash disco. I feel like I'm getting into a dumb argument here because obviously this is not the reason disco died. Disco didn't die because white America collectively decided we're in a competition here to make the best disco and we're losing. We need to end this genre now. Disco reached a point of cultural saturation. It also began to get phased out technologically because following disco, you had electro and the new wave movements of the late 70s and early 80s, many of which took on rhythmic and aesthetic elements of disco and just sort of incorporated it in a new context. I mean, while in many respects, disco died, I feel like the soul and the heartbeat of disco lives on in so many of the other pop and dance genres to follow, obviously. Going all the way up until Daft Punk's Random Access Memories. I think disco is very much alive in many respects. Its various characteristics and elements just ended up getting offloaded into many of the music movements to follow. Has any band ever blown it worse than the Smashing Pumpkins? They went from making two of the best albums of the 90s and becoming hugely successful to becoming has-beens in the span of like 5 years. They've been irrelevant and awful ever since. Like, seriously, how do you even get to adore level bad in only a few years? It's like the Dollar Tree version of the Cruel Intentions soundtrack. That's a brutal adore take. I mean, Adore is obviously not the best, but yeah, I think there's some good tracks on Adore. I think there's some good tracks on there. But I guess to answer your question, I think you be a dick. You know, you basically like ruin your band and whittle it down to the point where it just becomes about the front guy. And, you know, when like clearly the beauty and the appeal of Smashing Pumpkins was so much more than that. But I think Billy Corgan just started to, if you look into the history of the band and so on and so forth, operate within the band in a tyrant-like fashion. And I just feel like long term, that's not good for a group. That's not good for a band. That's not good for creativity. And, I think it ended up kind of, catching up with the band, sadly. Sample clearance laws should not exist. Point blank, period. If a composer thinks they are owed thousands of dollars in royalties and damages over a 10-second song snippet, they're greedy to a delusional level. Imagine how many more Since I Left You's and Low End Theories would have been produced without those stupid laws in place. I mean, fair point. I do want to err on the side of like creativity here in most cases, simply because like it would be amazing if like more of those records existed, or introducings, or Paul's Boutique. It would be amazing to kind of have that creative freedom there. But, however, I think as long as we continue to live in the capitalist hellscape that we do, they should at least be in place to a degree, because there is like kind of a economic hierarchy that we're all functioning under right now. And if those laws were not in place, you absolutely, positively fucking know that every major artist and their label would be just fucking ransacking the musical catalogs of whatever artists they want, with no repercussions whatsoever, be they underground or be they sort of more at mid-level, and just like ripping off all their song ideas and ripping off all their samples and just like completely fucking gutting all of the best records of all time and just kind of twisting them into new songs that are actually appealing. And whatever artists would be doing that, like Drake, for example, let's just use him because obviously he's at the top of the peak and he just did that awful Daft Punk song, which I hope he paid out the ass to ruin that fucking song. Yeah, there would be a million more songs like that. And there'd be much more output along those lines than there would be like, oh yeah, man, the next Since I Left You is going to come out because there's no more copyright laws. Yeah, instead probably what you're going to be hearing is Jack Harlow rapping over like a Stereolab sample or some shit like that, and then Stereolab doesn't get any money for it. Peeing sitting down as a man should be considered as an acceptable alternative and not as an emasculating action, which is an insane leap on society's part, IMO. Do people still make a big deal about this? I piss sitting down all the fucking time, and the reason why is because like sometimes I'm working on my fucking phone. It's double tasking. If I'm like standing there in front of the toilet, I got to worry about like, oh, is the pee going in there? Is it going here? Is it going there? Like my spraying. If I'm gonna be standing, I gotta. If I'm sitting down, at least it like a straw, and I just make a clean, quiet transfer that way. So, I think that's probably the manliest way you can do it. Purity Ring has a flawless discography. Shrines is their dark album. Another Eternity is the opposite of Shrines by being bathed in light, and Womb is their rebirth album. Yeah, like perfectly bland electro indie pop where the vocals sound the same from track to track to track. I can't. I'm sorry. I can't. I mean, I've tried with Purity Ring over and over and over, and I just can't. I mean, their discography certainly is consistent in a way, and if you really love the sound they bring to the table, I could get why their records would drive you gaga, because they kind of scratch that itch really nicely. However, for me, they just really don't do much, and that's why consistently I'm just not really impressed with their records. Along with Tennis, I'm just not really into Tennis. But, I feel like I know a Tennis song. I roughly know a Tennis song when I hear it. That's how I know to avoid it, because it's just too quaint in exactly the way that turns me off big time. And I just don't know what else to say.
Tennis is my favorite sport, and this is my favorite band.
The amount of writers / producers on a project should really be taken into account when reviewing. I feel like putting a behemoth record written in a boardroom next to one that has 1 or 2 songwriters is tricky. The record with more songwriters / producers should be held to a higher standard and vice versa. I mean, I get that in the abstract, but what is the standard? Is there a standard for songs written by 5 people as opposed to songs that are written by 4 people? Ultimately, at the end of the day, the only thing that truly honestly matters is whether or not the song is good, whether or not it is appealing. And at least for me personally, when I'm reviewing, the only time in which the number of writers factors is when it's, to my surprise, when the song sounds really awful or underwritten, like barely anything was added or done to it. How could 30 people have possibly been involved in this song? Album of the year is better than Rate Your Music, better design, and less toxic user base. I don't entirely disagree. Ooh, there's another take here as well. Same guy who's also saying album of the year is better than Rate Your Music. I mean, look, the comparisons, I don't entirely deny that there's validity to these comparisons. Here's the thing. As far as user-based, user-generated opinion sites, I think album of the year is kind of like, a utopia. It's like a clean, nice, beautiful, futuristic city that's running on renewable energy, and everyone's, polite to each other, and there's kindness abound, and we've been existing for 1,000 years in a state of peace, and, there's like amazing, incredible, just mind-blowing orgies down in the common yard in the middle of the city every weekend. They're just, wow, just incredible. Like, you gotta go. In contrast, Rate Your Music is a lot more like World War III. Everyone's shooting each other down and teabagging on the dead bodies of their enemies, and just throwing out the worst ratings, and be they super negative or just blindingly positive, just awful takes, like totally backwards views on hip hop and a lot of black music, just championing some of the most generic and bland and awful prog and metal that I've heard in my entire life. Yeah, you know what? It's bad, it's terrible. But for whatever reason, there's a part of me that enjoys the chaos. There's a romance to it in a way that I can't deny. That's going to be it for this Let's Argue. Thank you for watching. Over here next to my head, it's another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Hit that upworthy link, y'all. And I'll see you in the next one. Anthony Fantano, argue forever.